Yeah, I wanted to share a few more texts on the issue of the Sabbath, because there are quite a lot of text on that topic, and even in this video, I'm not going to cover all of them. Uh, this time, I wanted to start by addressing the issue of sin and what sin is. There's only one text in the Holy Scriptures which tells us what sin is, or the text. There's only one text which defines what sin is, and that's First John 3 verse 4, and it says, "Whosoever commits sin transgresses also the law, for sin is a transgression of the law." So that very last part is probably the most important part, which says, "For sin is a transgression of the law." For those who are saying we don't have to keep the commandments anymore, specifically, I think they are referring specifically to the Sabbath. Um, we see from this verse here that it defines for us what sin is, and we know that we are still in a sinful world. Christ has not come again for the second time to do away with sin. So, if there's sin in the world, that means the commandments are still binding. Um, the next text I would like to read is the chapter before the one I read just now, First John 2, verses 3 or 4. But I'll start with verse 1, where it says, "My little children, these things write I unto you, that ye sin not. And if any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous." And then verse 3 says, "And hereby we do know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He that says, or he that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him." So, I mean, it's very clear. It's not me saying it. It's the Holy Scripture saying it, that if anyone says they know God, but they do not keep his commandments, that person is a liar. Yeah, so the next text I would like to share is found in the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 12. It says, Then returned they unto Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is from Jerusalem a Sabbath day's journey. So this is after the crucifixion, and we see here that the book of Acts is still talking about the Sabbath. If the Sabbath was not relevant and it was nailed to the cross, like many argue, then I don't think it would be making reference to the Sabbath. Next one is Acts 16:13. Acts 16:13 says, "And on the Sabbath we went out of the city by a river side, where prayer was wont to be made, and we sat down and spake unto the women which resorted thither." So once again, it's after the crucifixion, and the Christians were still keeping the Sabbath. Just refer to another one which is in Hebrews. Yeah, so Hebrews 4, verses 3, 4, and 11. I'm going to read here. It says, "For we which have believed do enter into rest, as he said, As I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works." And jumping on to verse 11, it says, "Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief." So Paul, who many Christians say, that Paul said we're not to keep the Sabbath anymore. The Sabbath was done away with. We're now under grace. Paul is clearly saying here that we still have to keep the Sabbath. So another one is another text I want to refer to is in Romans 3:31. Romans 3:31 says, "Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law." I don't know. There seems to be this thing that sometimes as Christians we cherry pick the texts from the Holy Scriptures that sound good to us, and we leave out the bits that are maybe inconvenient, because it clearly says there that we have to establish a law. The law that he's talking about is God's law, which was written on stone, the Ten Commandments. Now James 2 verse 10 is a very interesting one. Let me just look that. Yeah, James 2 verse 10 says, "For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all." So the Ten Commandments are actually like a set. You know, if you break one of them, you've broken all of them. You can't say, we shouldn't say, I keep 9 of the commandments, but I don't keep one. We have to keep all of them, and we do that by God's grace. It's not like, we can keep the law and be perfect through our own efforts. We do that with God's help. Matthew 5:17 is the next one I want to go to. Yeah, Matthew 5:17 is where Jesus is speaking about the law, and he says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of God of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." The next one I want to read is Revelation 22:14. Yeah, Revelation 22:14 says, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city." So those who when he says do his commandments, means those who keep or observe God's commandments. He says they shall have a right to the tree of life. I don't know about you, but I want to have access to the tree of life, and I'm trying to encourage everyone to be obedient to God's commandments so that they can have a right to the tree of life. We know that those who have a right to the tree of life are those that are going to be are make it into heaven. There's no one who's going to who will not make it into the kingdom who's going to have access to the tree of life. I also wanted to just talk about some of the observations I've made in terms of why there is such a why so many Christians are fighting against the issue of the Sabbath, and or why so many excuses are made not to keep the Sabbath. Um, I just wanted to say that it's sometimes felt that when someone talks about the Sabbath, they are trying to convince Sunday keeping Christians to join the Seventh Day Adventist Church or the SDA Church. That's not the case with me. That's not my position. My belief is that Christians should keep or observe the Sabbath in whatever church they attend, as long as their denominations are faithfully following the Holy Scriptures. So no one has a trademark on the Sabbath. As soon as many Christians hear someone trying to encourage them to keep the Sabbath, they think that whoever that person is trying to get them to join the SDA Church. The SDA Church doesn't have a trademark on the Sabbath. The Sabbath was instituted by God, and in the commandment where it says we are to observe or keep the Sabbath, it's for everyone. So I'd encourage everyone, whatever church you go to, whatever denomination you're in, keep the Sabbath in that denomination. You don't necessarily have to leave and join the SDA Church. After all, there are many bad things that are happening in the SDA Church, and you may be discouraged, but I think it's best for everyone to find a good church. Most of them are small churches, that are following what the Holy Scriptures say. Find a good church to go to, and keep the Sabbath whilst you're there. I just wanted also to mention some Christian sects, some churches that have kept the Sabbath through the centuries, starting with obviously with the early Christians. The early Christians kept the Sabbath. I mean, I shared many texts, especially in the Book of Acts, that show that. And today I've shared some other texts as well that show that the Sabbath was kept and all the commandments were kept after the crucifixion. But I wanted to show, what I've learned from my own studies about different groups or denominations that have kept the Sabbath. So it's not only the Seventh Day Adventist Church that keeps the Sabbath. There are many churches that have kept the Sabbath, and some are still here keeping the Sabbath. I think it'll be ignorant for. I think it's the argument that SDAs are the only ones who keep the Sabbath. That argument is made through ignorance. So I've already mentioned the early Christians, of who we read about, especially in the Book of Acts. And let's not forget that, when the Bible talks about a remnant who shall be saved when Christ comes, the remnant is not going to be any different to the original. The remnant is going to be exactly like the original. So some groups that have kept the Sabbath are the Waldenses and Albigenses, and these were European Christians from France and Italy who kept the Sabbath, and they were actually persecuted for that by the Roman Catholic Church. We have the Ethiopian Christians who also kept the Sabbath. We have the Saint Thomas Christians from India who kept the Sabbath. The Sabbath keeping Christians from Ireland, and I'm sure many have heard of someone called Saint Patrick, and he's very often portrayed as a Roman Catholic, but actually he wasn't a Roman Catholic. He actually kept the Sabbath. He was a Bible believing Christian. So today, besides SDAs, there are Seventh Day Baptists, and there are even other groups that maybe originally started worshipping with Seventh Day Adventists, who then split up. So there are free Seventh Day Adventists, and there are also Reformed Adventists, as well as many other groups that keep the Sabbath. There may be others who are actually haven't mentioned here as well. So in John 14:15, Jesus said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." And I just wanted to add that there's no salvation without obedience. And I'll just finish by reading John 14:21. Yeah, just two more texts before I end. First one is John 14:21. It says, and this is Jesus speaking. He said, "He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him, and will manifest myself to him." So there can be no, we can't say that we love God when we are actually disobedient to his commandments. We can't say we love Christ when we don't keep the commandments or follow what he says. Very last text is 1 John 2:1-4. Yeah, I just realized I already referred to that text. So I think that's the end of what I wanted to share on the Sabbath. There are still some other Bible verses that I could have shared, but videos can be very long if I want to share everything. So yeah, what I would encourage everyone to do is to do their own research, to study on their own these issues. Don't be led by your pastor or church elder, and don't. There's a tendency by many Christians to refer to this is what my church teaches, therefore this is what I follow. I think as Christians, then we should always be asking, what does the Bible say? We shouldn't be talking about, the church that I go to says this, or the church that I go to teaches this, because that the church can be teaching erroneous doctrine. So we need to go to the source and find out what God says in His holy word. That's the only way to be safe as Christians.